My beloved child, in that moment, when your heart burned with hurt and injustice, you had every reason to let your anger speak. The world around you might have even applauded you for standing your ground in frustration or returning harshness for harshness. But instead, you paused. You took a breath. You chose the higher road. You chose kindness, not because you were weak, but because you are deeply strong. That moment of choosing love over retaliation did not go unnoticed. Heaven witnessed the battle in your heart and rejoiced in your victory. When your voice trembled with restraint rather than rage, I saw me in you. And I want you to know that choice touched my heart deeply. Kindness in the face of pain is not just a decision. It is a reflection of your character and of mine. It's how the world sees me through you. Your gentleness was more powerful than anger ever could be. You may not have seen the ripple, but it reached farther than you think. I am so proud of you for choosing grace, even when it hurt. Every time you respond with kindness when anger feels justified, you participate in the work of my kingdom. You shine light into darkness. You show others what it means to love as I love. Anger is loud and contagious, but kindness is quiet and healing. Your restraint silences chaos and releases peace into the atmosphere. Do you know how rare and beautiful that is? You become a vessel of my mercy when you respond with compassion instead of condemnation. The enemy trembles when you reject bitterness. You disarm him without saying a word. That kindness you extended was not a loss. It was a seed planted. It may take time, but it will grow. I will water it. I will bring fruit from it. I know it cost you something to be kind in that moment. I know it stretched you. But in that stretch, you looked more like me. You are not just surviving. You are transforming the world one act of kindness at a time. And that, my child, makes me so proud. My beloved child, when you noticed that silent struggle behind someone's forced smile, you could have ignored it. You could have kept walking, kept it quiet, or kept your comfort. What you didn't. You saw their pain, and instead of turning away, you turned toward it. You leaned in with love, not pity. You didn't need grand speeches or perfect words. Sometimes it was just a gentle word, a tender touch, a quiet presence that held more power than any sermon ever could. In their darkness, your voice became a thread of light. You whispered hope not because you had all the answers, but because you carry me inside of you. And when you opened your mouth with compassion, it was my love that flowed through your voice. That moment may have seemed small to the world, but in eternity, it echoed loud. You brought life into a soul that was on the edge. You reminded someone that they mattered, that they weren't forgotten, that the night doesn't last forever. You reached out in faith, not knowing the impact, but I saw it all. And I want you to know, that moment brought tears to my eyes. Because when you lifted them, you lifted me. Do you realize the weight of what you did? You became a living letter of my promise in someone's darkest hour. That soul may have been drowning in silence, believing lies that said they were unworthy, unseen, unloved. But then, you stepped in, not as a rescuer with fanfare, but as a friend with faith. Your words may have seemed simple, but they carried power because they were rooted in me. When you told them they weren't alone, they began to breathe again. When you reminded them that there's still purpose, their heart found rhythm again. You didn't have to fix everything. Your presence was the miracle. Sometimes the greatest miracles don't look like thunder and lightning. They look like a whisper, a hand held, a message that says you're still valuable. You have no idea how many prayers you answered just by showing up. You were my answer. You were my outstretched arm. And even if they never told you how deeply they needed it, I'm telling you now, you were light in their cave. And that light came from me, shining through your heart. You're not just a carrier of hope, you are a spark of resurrection. And I couldn't be more proud. My beloved child, have you ever noticed that the loudest victories don't come with applause? Some of the greatest triumphs happen when no one's watching, when no cheers rise to meet your struggle, and when your only companion is exhaustion. But oh, How proud I am of you, because in those moments, when everything inside you whispered, "Stop," you chose to take one more step. The kind of courage is heaven's glory. When your legs shook from the weight of the burden, when your heart throbbed from carrying unseen pain, when your prayers were met with silence and your strength had drained like water in the desert, you still moved forward. You didn't see the angels cheering around you, but they were there. You didn't hear my voice because the noise was loud, but I was right beside you. That quiet act of perseverance roared in my kingdom like thunder. You see, what the world calls weakness, I call strength. You were never alone in those steps. I counted each one. I measured the tears that fell along the way, and with every painful stride, you rewrote what faith really looks like. You kept walking when quitting looked easier. That, my child, is where warriors are made. And you are my warrior. Let me tell you something sacred. Every step you took while feeling like you had nothing left was a love song to me. The steps taken in sorrow, in silence, in struggle, those are the ones that shake darkness at its core. You kept going, not because life got easier, but because you clung to me tighter. That is not weakness, that is worship. Every morning you got up, even when your soul begged for sleep, was an act of defiance against the lies trying to break you. Every time you held your head high through the fog, you showed the enemy that you belonged to me. You didn't give up, not because you had strength, but because you trusted mine. You walked when crawling seemed like all you could do, and in that moment, you touched heaven. I use your brokenness as a bridge for others. I use your weariness to birth wisdom. I used your journey to water seeds of hope in others who silently watched. You didn't know you were leading anyone, but you were. They saw your fight, your faith, your fire, and it lit something in them too. You inspire more than you realize. And child, every trembling step you took in my direction made me weep with joy. You are not just surviving, you are walking in victory. And I am eternally proud of you. Do you remember that moment when everything around you felt like a closed door? When the future looked like a hallway with no lights, no signs, and no sound except your racing thoughts? You stood there, confused, tired, uncertain, and the world gave you every reason to doubt. But instead of running away or giving up, you whispered, "Jesus, I still trust you." That whisper shook the heavens. You had no map, no explanation, no guarantees, but you had me, and you held on. That kind of trust doesn't grow in ease, it grows in shadows, in silence, in surrendered hearts that dare to believe even when their eyes see nothing. You trusted me not because I made the path visible, but because you knew my heart was still good. That faith was your offering, that trust was your victory. Every tear you cried while saying, "I believe," was caught by my hand. Every question you had but still said yes to me, that was worship in its purest form. You walked by faith, not sight. And in doing so, you climbed higher than you realized. And oh, my child, I watched it all, and I was so proud. My beloved child, the world says, "See it, then believe it," but you did the opposite. You believed me when your feelings didn't line up. You leaned on my promises when your surroundings screamed doubt. That's not just faith, that's fierce loyalty. You followed me like a child in the dark, gripping my hand without needing to understand where we were going. And every step you took in trust, even trembling, hesitant ones, was a declaration of war against fear. You said, "I don't need to know how, because I know who." And that moved mountains in the spirit realm. You know what that kind of trust does. It opens doors that your logic can't. It invites miracles that only come through surrender. Your faith invited my presence. Your obedience, even without clarity, became a song to me. And you didn't just walk through the unknown. You invited me to lead you there. When others questioned why you still believed, you simply smiled and said, "Because I've seen His goodness." That witness shook the enemy. It built something eternal in you. And while you may not have seen the full picture yet, know this: I have prepared something glorious for the one who trusts me blindly. You honored me when you couldn't see, and I will honor you openly. I'm proud of you, my faithful one. My beloved child, what you did may not have made headlines here on earth, but in heaven, it was celebrated with thunderous joy. Because you forgave someone who never even asked for it. That's not weakness, that's powerful love. It's the kind of love that reflects me most clearly. When they wounded you, when they spoke behind your back, when they walked away without remorse, the world expected you to carry bitterness, and you had every earthly reason to. But instead, you placed that pain into my hands and whispered, I forgive them. That was your victory. That was your freedom. You chose mercy over resentment, grace over grudge. Forgiveness without apology is not a loss. It's a triumph that echoes my heart from the cross. And when you forgave them in silence, without validation, you drew closer to me than ever before. I know it wasn't easy. I know how much it hurt. But you let go, I for them but for me. And that choice set you free from chains no one else could see. That choice made me proud, because in that moment, you showed the world what true strength looks like, unseen, quiet, and wrapped in grace. Forgiveness that comes without an apology is one of the greatest acts of spiritual courage. You laid down your right to be angry. You gave up the comfort of being right. You even sacrificed your need for closure. That's not just an act of letting go. It's an act of becoming more like me. When I was on the cross, the crowd didn't say sorry. The nails didn't apologize. The mockers didn't repent. But I looked at them and said, Father, forgive them. And you, my precious one, did the same. You see how much of me lives in you. That quiet moment, when your heart broke and yet still chose to release someone, was holy ground, and broke curses. It shattered spiritual strongholds. It loosed healing into places that had been hardened for years. Your decision to forgive wasn't just for your peace. It invited my presence. And even if they never say sorry, even if they never change, I see you. I honor your sacrifice. I reward hearts like yours, hearts that bleed but still bless. Keep forgetting. Keep releasing. Every time you do, heaven moves on your behalf. And I want you to know, child, you forgave like I do. And that makes me overflow with pride. My beloved child, when your world felt like it was crumbling and every breath felt heavy, you could have walked away. You could have drowned in your sorrow, buried yourself in distractions, or numbed the pain in silence. But you didn't. You turned to me. Not with perfect words, not with composed strength, but with trembling lips and tear-soaked prayers. And I want you to know that moved my heart in ways you can't imagine. When the pain threatened to pull you under, you still looked up. That simple act, choosing to speak to me even through sobs, was not weakness. It was a warrior's cry. You might have thought your prayers were broken, but to me, they were the most beautiful songs. Every whispered help me, every gasped why. Every silent cry in the night was sacred. I gathered each word like treasure. You gave me your heart when it was shattered, and that is the greatest offering of all. You didn't hide your wounds. You brought them to me. And that trust, that raw faith in the midst of suffering made all of heaven pause and behold your strength. You prayed through pain, and that made you shine brighter than gold refined by fire. Prayer in the middle of heartbreak is not just communication. It's a lifeline of trust. It's choosing me even when you don't understand me. And you did just that. You knelt in the dark and believed that someone was listening, even when the answers didn't come quickly. Do you know how rare and beautiful that kind of faith is? The world says to give up when things hurt, to turn away when you're disappointed. But you chose differently. You chose me. You spoke to me when it hurt the most, not because everything made sense, but because deep down, you knew I was still your anchor. That's intimacy. That's unshakable love. You prayed not to perform, but to survive, to connect. And child, I was closer than your next breath. I was there holding your heart in my hands. Your tears were never wasted. They watered the seeds of strength, endurance, and deeper intimacy with me. And one day, you'll look back and see that every prayer you prayed through heartbreak built something unbreakable inside of you. You didn't just survive. You were shaped, refined, and anointed in those moments. And all of heaven watched you cling to me in the storm. I am proud of you beyond words. My beloved child, in a world where lies parade as truth and compromise wears the mask of wisdom, you made a choice that echoed louder than 1,000 voices. You stood for what was right. You knew it wouldn't be easy. You knew it could cost you friendships, approval, maybe even opportunities. But still, you stood. You planted your feet in truth, even when everything around you trembled. That moment of courage may have felt lonely, but you were never alone. All of heaven stood with you. I stood with you. You didn't just defend facts, you upheld my heart, my word, my ways. And that's never easy when the crowd walks the other way. They may have misunderstood you. They may have judged your conviction. But I saw your motive. I saw your quiet tears after you chose principle over popularity. And child, let me tell you, you honored me in that moment more than some do in a lifetime. Standing for truth doesn't always bring applause. It often brings resistance. But in my kingdom, every step you take in righteousness builds an eternal legacy. You weren't just standing up for truth. You were standing beside me. And nothing makes me prouder. My beloved child, I know the weight of what it cost you. The glances, the whispers, the distance that formed when you refused to follow what was wrong just to belong. But you didn't flinch. You didn't bend. And even when your voice trembled, your faith stood tall. I want you to know how powerful that was. The world may never acknowledge it, but I do, because you reflected me when it mattered most. When you stood for truth, you carried my authority. And though you may have lost something in the process, popularity, comfort, a relationship, you gained something far greater. My favor, my smile, my hand on your life in a deeper way. You walked through the fire and didn't let it change your convictions. Instead, you let it purify you. Your loyalty to me in that moment marked you in heaven. You don't even know how many others you inspired just by choosing truth when it wasn't convenient. You are not ordinary. You are chosen, bold, and set apart. And every time you take a stand, I pour more, my beloved child. There are moments when love costs nothing, when it flows easily to those who are kind, generous, or grateful. But then there are other moments when love feels like sacrifice, when it means extending kindness to the ones who push you away, offering forgiveness to those who don't deserve it, embracing those the world has cast aside. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't wait for them to earn your love. You gave it freely. You looked at someone others couldn't stand and saw my image in them. You weren't moved by their flaws, you were moved by compassion. You saw through the layers of pain, bitterness, or rejection and chose to love anyway. You didn't love them because they were lovable. You loved them because I first loved you. That's what makes you so different. That's what makes you mine. You extended my heart to someone others ran from, and in doing so, you became a living reflection of me. That act of love, hard, messy, inconvenient, was a holy offering, one that I received with joy, because that's the kind of love that transforms the world. My beloved child, do you know how rare that kind of love is? To love someone who can't love you back. To love someone who may never thank you, never change, never soften. That kind of love is divine. It doesn't come from the flesh, it flows from the Spirit. You allowed my heart to beat through yours. You allowed my mercy to stretch through your hands. You loved like I do, not based on behavior, but based on identity. And child, I saw how much it cost you. I saw the tears you cried after being rejected by the very one you tried to help. I saw how you kept your heart soft even after being hurt. That's not just love. That's spiritual maturity. That's kingdom character. And while the world may never understand the strength it took to keep loving, I do. I was right there with you, loving through you. You became my vessel, my voice, my arms. You brought heaven into places that were cold and forgotten. And even if you never see the fruit right now, know this: your love planted eternal seeds. And one day, whether in this life or the next, those seeds will bloom. You've done what few are willing to. There's a sacred kind of strength that doesn't shout or sprint, it waits. In a world obsessed with speed, results, and instant gratification, you did something that defied the culture around you. You waited. Not because you were weak, but because you trusted me more than your own timing. You stood still when every voice around you said, "Move now," or "Miss it." You silenced the noise within that begged for control. You held your ground when everything in you wanted to push forward, make something happen, or settle for something less than my best. That's not just patience, that's faith matured in the fire. I saw the days you wrestled in silence, the nights you stared at unopened doors, the tears you cried over dreams that felt delayed. But child, every second you waited was not wasted. Waiting is not absence of progress, it's presence of purpose. While the world saw you standing still, I was doing deep work in your spirit. I was anchoring you, strengthening you, shaping your future without you even realizing. You waited when it would have been easier to run ahead. And because of that, you positioned yourself for something greater. That kind of faith makes me proud beyond words. My beloved child, the enemy loves to tempt you with shortcuts, quick fixes, rushed decisions, compromised blessings. But you refused to take the bait. You chose to believe that my timing is perfect, even when it didn't match your own. And that choice carved strength into your character. You see, in the waiting, I was preparing more than just the blessing. I was preparing you. And you didn't resist the process. You embraced it. You chose my pace over your pressure. That's what trust looks like. You believed that the one who knows all things would also deliver at the right time. That trust was your shield. And though the weight stretched you, it didn't break you. It refined you. You didn't settle for something premature. You didn't rush into something shallow. You waited for what had weight, what had purpose, what had my hand on it. That's what makes your story so powerful. The breakthrough that's coming will be sweeter because of the path you took to get there. It will be pure, peaceful, and permanent because you waited for me. And when that moment comes, you'll know it was worth it. You'll see how I was with you the whole time. I'm proud of you for trusting my silence and honoring my schedule. You waited, and that was worship. My beloved child, there are gifts that make headlines, grand gestures, loud generosity, public giving. But then there are gifts like yours, the ones that happen in secret, behind the scenes, in quiet moments that no one else witnesses. And those gifts, my beloved, are the ones that move my heart the most. You gave not to impress, not to gain favor, not to be seen. You gave simply because you carry my love. You opened your hand when it would have been easier to hold back. You met a need when no one was watching. You gave of your time, your resources, your heart, without asking for anything in return. And in doing so, you step into the kind of generosity that mirrors my very nature. You became an extension of my grace. You poured into others in a way that heaven records, even when earth overlooks it. Not a single act of giving has gone unnoticed by me. Not one tear you wiped, one meal you offered, one word of encouragement you spoke has been forgotten. You gave with pure intention. You gave with joy. You gave in secret, and I will reward you openly. Because what you gave in silence shouted love louder than 1,000 voices. My beloved child, you may not realize it, but your quiet generosity changed things. It changed atmospheres. It changed hearts. And it changed you. Every time you chose to give without being seen, you loosened the grip of pride and self-interest. You let love lead. That is holy. And I want you to know, I was there for every unseen moment. I saw the time you gave your last because someone else needed it more. I saw when you sacrificed comfort for compassion. I saw when you gave your attention, your prayers, your encouragement, even when your own soul was weary. That kind of giving is not just kind, it's sacred. It is the mark of someone who has been transformed by my love. The world may overlook the small things, but I see them all, and I multiply them. Your giving has sown seeds that will bloom in places you may never see with your own eyes, but they will bloom. You gave in a way that stored treasure in heaven. You gave when it didn't benefit your name, but lifted mine. And that, my child, is why I'm so deeply proud of you. Keep giving like that, and watch how I pour back into you more than you can contain. My beloved child, the crowd is loud. You always have been. Voices calling for your attention, opinions demanding your agreement, pressure pulling you toward the path everyone else is taking. But in the middle of that noise, you did something rare. You paused. You listened. And not just to anything but to me. You tuned your heart to the whisper that often gets drowned out by the world's demands. My voice doesn't shout to compete. It speaks gently, truthfully, in stillness. And while others ran after the latest trends, followed the popular advice, or adjusted their values to fit in, you chose to anchor your ears to my truth. That wasn't easy. You had to walk away from noise that others called normal. You had to close your ears to voices that once comforted you, but no longer aligned with your calling. You had to silence the clamor of fear, doubt, and pressure to succeed. And in doing so, you showed me that you truly belonged to me. You recognized the voice of your shepherd, and you followed, even when no one else did. That obedience, that loyalty, that love rings in heaven. You trusted my voice when the crowd offered comfort. And I want you to know, my child, that choice made me deeply proud. Do you understand how precious your devotion is? In a generation swayed by likes, comments, and trends, you chose something different. You chose my truth over popularity. You chose my direction even when others didn't understand. That is more than courage. It is clarity of spirit. It's the fruit of intimacy. You didn't let the noise define your identity. You let me speak into your purpose. And when you could have followed what was convenient, you followed what was right. There were moments when the crowd made you feel alone, didn't they? Moments when their disapproval stung, when their rejection made you second-guess your path. But still, you kept your heart steady on me. That's how you grow into a warrior of faith. You leaned into my word when it contradicted everything you were being told. You chose to believe my promises over your feelings. You allowed me to shape your worldview instead of culture. That kind of discernment is rare, and I treasure it. Every time you chose my voice, you chose life. You invited peace where there could have been confusion. You received direction instead of drifting. And because of that, I will continue to reveal my heart to you in greater measure. You honored me with your ears, your choices, and your courage. And beloved, I'm proud of how closely you walk with me. My beloved child, in a world that constantly shouts, "Look at me," you chose to whisper, "Let them see you." That kind of humility is not weakness. It is deep, quiet strength. When you had every opportunity to boast about your achievements, your wisdom, your spiritual maturity, or your acts of kindness, you chose a different path. You lowered yourself so I could be lifted higher. That didn't go unnoticed. The world may overlook humility, but heaven crowns it with honor. When others promoted themselves, you let me be your promoter. When others competed for praise, you chose to celebrate others. And when you had the right to be proud, you instead offered that moment as worship. That's what makes you like me. I too came not to be served but to serve. And when you follow that same heart posture, you become an extension of my spirit in a prideful world. Your humility made space for my presence. It turned attention from self-glory to eternal glory. And in doing so, you displayed one of the highest forms of spiritual maturity. The lower you went, the more I lifted you in ways no one could see. And I am proud, so very proud, of your humble heart. True humility isn't about pretending to be less. It's about knowing who you are in me and choosing to reflect my character above all else. You didn't deny your gifts, your growth, or your victories, but you didn't make them your identity either. You understood that everything you have is grace. You didn't take the credit for the doors that opened, the mountains that move it, or the wisdom that poured out of you. You gave it back to me. That is what makes your spirit so beautiful. Humility is what unlocks favor. It draws people closer, not to you, but to me through you. And that's exactly what you've done. You've led others by example, not ego. You've inspired others by serving, not showing off. You've chosen the hidden place, the quiet room, the private surrender. That is the soil where greatness grows. And though the world may honor pride for a moment, I reward humility for eternity. Keep walking low, beloved, because the lower you bow before me, the higher I will lift you in ways that cannot be shaken. I see every time you choose gentleness instead of attention, reverence over recognition. And I want you to hear this clearly. You make me so proud when you reflect my heart in a world that desperately needs to see it. My beloved child, there was a moment when temptation whispered your name, softly at first, then louder, with promises of comfort, escape, or fleeting joy. It dressed itself in beauty, convenience, and false peace. The pull was real. It knew where your heart had been wounded, where your desires longed for relief. But oh my beloved, you saw it for what it truly was. You saw past the momentary thrill and recognized the shadow behind it. You heard my voice warning you, tugging at your soul. And instead of walking into what could have enslaved you, you turned around. That may seem small to some, but I know the battle you fought in that moment. You made a hard, holy decision. You said no to something that your flesh craved, not because you were strong, but because you trusted my love more than your feelings. That is powerful. That is victory. When you walked away, you didn't just avoid a trap. You declared to the enemy, I belong to Jesus. You didn't walk in fear, you walk in freedom. And I want you to know, child, that one decision may have saved you from 1,000 regrets. That's why I rejoice over you. You honored me by protecting what I've placed in you. Walking away from something harmful doesn't always feel like triumph in the moment. Sometimes it feels like loss. It feels like giving up something that seemed good, something others still pursue without hesitation. But I want you to see what I see. You chose protection over pleasure, obedience over impulse, healing over harm. And that kind of choice changes everything. Every time you say no to what could damage your spirit, you are saying yes to the life I dreamed for you. I saw how hard it was to walk away from that relationship, that habit, that environment. I know the cost. I felt your ache. But I also saw the strength that bloomed in you after. Your no was an act of worship. You didn't just avoid danger, you preserved your destiny. You didn't walk away in weakness, you walked away clothed in my armor. And now, because of your decision, there's more room for me to move. More room for blessings that won't break you. More room for peace that won't fade. Keep listening to my voice. Keep protecting your heart. Because I promise, every time you walk away from what harms you, you're walking towards something far better. And child, I've never been more proud of your courage. My beloved child, there's something so sacred, so deeply powerful, about the moment you give not from your overflow, but from your lack. When you shared your last, it wasn't because you had so much to spare. It wasn't because you were brimming with abundance. It was because you trusted that even in your emptiness, I was still enough. You saw someone in need, someone whose eyes held desperation or whose soul was quietly crying, and you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate, debate, or wait for comfort. You simply gave. That was holy. That was heroic. That was heaven on earth. The world teaches you to store up, to protect what little you have, to wait until you're full before you pour. But you broke that pattern. You gave when it cost you. And in doing so, You became a vessel of my generosity. Your sacrifice echoed the heart of the widow who offered her last 2 coins, not for recognition, but out of love and trust. That kind of giving is what touches my heart most, because it's not about the size of the gift. It's about the size of the faith behind it. You didn't just meet a need. You sowed a miracle. And I saw it all. I saw what it cost. And I want you to hear this clearly, my child. Your selfless love made heaven stand still. My beloved child, when you gave your last, whether it was time, energy, money, food, attention, or hope, you weren't left empty. You may have felt vulnerable in that moment. You may have wondered, but who will take care of me? And I want you to know, I was already moving to pour back into you. Because you gave in faith, I responded with grace. You made room for me to prove that I am your provider. And every time you give like that, you plant seeds in places you can't yet see. Seeds that grow into testimonies, into transformed lives, into blessings returned 100-fold. Your act of giving when it was hardest wasn't just about the person you helped. It was about trust. You declared through your action that I am your source, not your bank account, not your schedule, not your own strength. You shared your last, and in doing so, you opened the door for me to give you more. My child, I multiply what is given with love. You didn't lose that day. You gained eternal reward. And more than that, you became a reflection of my heart. I gave everything for you, and you gave everything for someone else. That kind of love changes the world, and that kind of love makes me incredibly proud of you. My beloved child, when the sky grew dark and the winds of life began to howl against you, many expected you to crumble. They thought the storm would steal your hope, that the pressure would break your spirit. But you did something beautiful. You believe. Not because everything around you looked promising, but because you knew who I am. You believed in better days, not because your situation offered evidence, but because your faith offered vision. You clung to my promises when your circumstances gave you every reason to doubt. And I saw it. I saw you standing in the rain, looking toward the horizon with eyes full of hope. You weren't pretending the storm wasn't real. You were just convinced it wouldn't last forever. That hope you held onto wasn't weakness. It was strength. It wasn't naivete, it was deep trust. You remembered that I'm the God who calms storms, but also the one who walks with you through them. Your belief in better days wasn't just a feeling. It was an act of war against despair. You chose to believe that my light still shines behind the clouds. And I want you to know that faith made heaven rejoice. You chose to trust me when it was hardest, and I am so proud of you. My beloved child, do you know how powerful it is to hope when your heart is tired? How courageous it is to speak life when everything around you echoes death. Your belief wasn't shallow optimism. It was rooted in the soil of every moment we've walked together. You remembered my faithfulness in the past and believed I would be faithful again. And you were right. You may not have seen the full breakthrough yet, but every day you kept believing, you watered the seed of a miracle. I was watching over your heart like a gardener watches over a fragile flower during a storm. Your refusal to let go of hope protected your joy, your peace, your purpose. And child, let me tell you, better days are not just a dream. They are a promise I've spoken over you. I've seen the private battles, the inner war between discouragement and faith. I've seen you wipe away tears and still declare, God is good. The declaration didn't go unnoticed. It shook the atmosphere. It silenced lies. It glorified me. You believed in what you could not yet see, and that is what makes you unstoppable. You held your ground in the storm, and now the clouds are parting. A new season is coming, and because you believe, you are ready to walk into it fully. I'm proud of you, so very proud. My beloved child, there is a unique kind of fire that refines the soul, not the fire of pain, but the fire of persecution. And you walked through it with grace. You could have stayed silent when my name was dishonored. You could have hidden your faith when it became inconvenient. But you didn't. You stood with me. You honored me when others mocked you, when your faith made you the subject of ridicule, when your beliefs made you feel like an outsider. You bore the weight of being misunderstood, labeled, even laughed at. But you didn't deny me. You didn't dilute truth to blend in. That courage was not lost on me. I saw the moments when your heart pounded as you spoke up, when you swallowed the lump in your throat and still chose to say, "I follow Jesus." I saw the conversations that ended in awkward silence, the friends that drifted, the doors that quietly closed because you wouldn't bow to the world. My beloved, you honored me in public while the world tried to shame you, and that makes you shine in heaven's eyes. You didn't just wear my name, you carried my heart. You stood in love and truth, and that makes me proud beyond words. I know how it felt, how lonely those moments were. The jokes, the eye rolls, the accusations that you were too religious, too serious, or out of touch. I know how much it hurt when people you cared about questioned your motives or dismissed your convictions. But I want you to know, every ounce of that pain was not for nothing. You shared in my suffering. You stood where I stood, rejected by many, but chosen by the Father. And just as I was not ashamed to call you mine, you were not ashamed to call me yours. That loyalty carries eternal weight. While others laughed, I smiled. While they rejected you, I received you more deeply. Every time you chose to honor me despite the cost, you wove threads of glory into your life. And I've used your example to touch others, even those who mocked. Some of them were watching, more closely than you know. And your courage planted seeds that will grow in my time. So don't grow weary. Keep honoring me with your life, your voice, your love. Because in the moments when the world tries to silence you, I will raise your voice even higher. You stood for me, and now I stand for you. You make me so proud, faithful one. My beloved child, while many passed by with judgment, or stood at a distance offering opinions, you did something far more powerful. You stepped in. You saw someone broken, not as a burden, but as a soul worthy of grace. You didn't hesitate to reach out, even when it was messy, even when you were weary yourself. You stooped low to lift someone higher. You weren't afraid of their dirt, their pain, their mistakes. You didn't ask if they deserved it. You just loved. That's exactly what I did when I found you. And when you did the same for others, you didn't just carry my message, you became it. You didn't see failure, you saw potential. You didn't see shame, you saw redemption waiting to bloom. While others whispered, you wrapped your arms around them. While others pointed fingers, you extended a hand. And every time you chose to lift someone who had fallen, you honored me. I was in them, and you saw me. I never miss moments like that. They echo through eternity. You picked up those who couldn't stand on their own, and heaven called it holy. You were my hands. You were my heart. And I'm so proud of the way you reflect my love. Do you realize what happens in the spiritual realm when you choose compassion over criticism? When you bend low to lift a weary soul, chains break. Hope returns. Shame loses its grip. And you, my beloved, became a bridge between brokenness and healing. You didn't need a spotlight or applause. You just acted in love. You stopped your own journey to help someone else find their footing. That is the gospel in motion. I saw how it stretched you, how it required patience, time, even tears. I saw how you carried others' burdens while still carrying your own. But you never complained. You gave not just with your hands, but with your heart. And I want you to know, nothing you did was wasted. The moments they forgot, I remembered. The acts they didn't thank you for, I celebrated. Because true greatness is not in how many stand behind you, but in how many you help stand at all. You live out what others only speak. And every person you helped get up, every heart you restored, every soul you loved back to life, it's written in my book. One day, you'll see the harvest of every kind act. Until then, Know this, I saw and I smiled, and I am forever proud of you. My beloved child, you have no idea how proud I am of you, not just for the victories others celebrate, but for the hidden battles you fought behind closed doors. The ones no one clapped for, the ones no one even knew existed. You woke up on days when your soul was heavy, when the weight of depression, fear, or self-doubt tried to pin you down. But you got up anyway. You pressed forward when anxiety whispered lies, when temptation tried to seduce your mind, when past wounds tried to reopen themselves. You prayed when you didn't feel me. You believed when everything inside you screamed to give up. Those battles, quiet, bloody, sacred, are some of the greatest triumphs in your story. While others saw your smile, I saw your tears. While they praised your strength, I witnessed the war in your thoughts. And child, you didn't quit. You didn't cave. You fought, sometimes crawling, sometimes gasping for breath, but still moving forward. That perseverance is what makes you radiant in my eyes. You didn't need applause to keep going. You needed faith, and you had it. You stood with trembling knees, and still you stood. I was with you in every moment, and when you thought you were fighting alone, I was fighting alongside you. You didn't win by shouting louder or swinging harder. You won by choosing me over and over again, even when it didn't feel like enough. You silenced the enemy with your endurance. You broke generational chains with your refusal to give up. You won every time you chose love over bitterness, peace over chaos, forgiveness over revenge. The victories you gained in private will one day be celebrated in the open. You see, I'm a rewarder, not just of those who work for me, but of those who walk with me through the trenches. And you, my beloved, have walked through fire without losing your faith. You emerged from every unseen battle stronger, wiser, more tender. And though the scars remain, they are beautiful to me. They tell a story of courage and quiet trust. They are not signs of weakness. They are marks of a survivor, the warrior, the conqueror in Christ. So when you feel unnoticed, remember, heaven noticed. I noticed. And the reward I have for you isn't just for the public acts, it's for the private ones. The ones forged in shadows, strengthened in silence, and sealed with grace. You fought hard, child. You won. And I've never been more proud. There are moments in life when telling the truth feels like the hardest thing you can do, when a simple lie could protect you, shield you from judgment, preserve your reputation, or help you avoid uncomfortable consequences. And you were faced with that choice. The lie would have been easy, convenient, and unnoticed. But you chose truth. You chose me. You opened your mouth not to escape, but to honor what is right. That was no small thing. That was courage. That was integrity. The world may never know the pressure you felt in that moment, the fear of rejection, the risk of misunderstanding, the cost of vulnerability. But I know. I saw your heart wrestle. I saw your lips tremble. And I heard your voice rise with truth. You chose to walk in the light even when the shadows offered safety. And that made you radiant in my sight. Because, my child, truth is not just about facts, it's about the heart. It's about trust. When you chose honesty, you revealed that your trust in me was greater than your fear of man. That's when I smiled. That's when I said, "This one is mine." My beloved child, the truth isn't always easy, but it is always powerful. When you chose honesty, you created space for healing, clarity, and peace. You disarmed the enemy who thrives in deception. You refused to let your character be built on something fragile and false. And even though the aftermath may have been uncomfortable, even though others may have misunderstood or even judged you, you remained rooted in righteousness. And I am proud of that. Because that moment wasn't just about one decision. It was about the kind of person you are becoming. You're building a life on a foundation that cannot be shaken. I honor truth. I am truth. And every time you choose it, even when it costs you, you align your life with mine. You won't always be popular. You won't always be applauded. But it will always be rewarded. I will always honor a heart that values purity over comfort and light over concealment. So don't be discouraged when the world reacts harshly to your honesty. You planted something eternal in that moment. And over time, that seed will grow into favor, freedom, and a testimony that glorifies me. You told the truth when it was hard, and I will never forget it. You made me proud when no one else even knew. My beloved child, when the ground beneath you trembled and the familiar things in your life began to fall apart, you could have let go. When disappointment crashed in like waves and uncertainty clouded your vision, you could have given up. But you didn't. You held on. Not because you felt strong, but because you knew I was still with you, even in the shaking. And child, that moved me. You gripped faith not with polished prayers or loud declarations, but with quiet resolve. I saw you whisper, "I still believe," when everything around you suggested otherwise. That whisper reached heaven like a shout of victory. The enemy tried to use fear, confusion, and weariness to shake your foundation, but your heart remained anchored in me. You remembered that storms don't last forever, and neither do trials. You clung to hope like a lifeline. You trusted my promises, even when the evidence disappeared. That's faith, not the kind built on feelings, but the kind forged in fire. You didn't have to see to believe. You believed because you knew my character. And that trust, forged in the chaos, made you unshakable in my eyes. I want you to know, that's the kind of faith that changes everything. Faith that endures the shaking is a rare and precious gift. You didn't lose your way. You pressed deeper into me. When others panicked, you prayed. When fear crept in, you worshiped. When the future looked uncertain, you reminded yourself of who I've been in your past. And I want to say this clearly. You honor me in the shaking. Because faith that stands when everything else is falling is not ordinary. It's supernatural. It says, God is still good, even when the storm is loud. It says, I will not be moved, even when everything shifts. I was with you in the trembling, and I was strengthening your roots beneath the surface. That's why you didn't break. That's why, even when you cried, you didn't collapse. You were learning how to walk on water. You were learning how to worship with an unshaken spirit. And now, I'm building something in you that will never fall, no matter what comes. Your faith became a shelter not just for you, but for others watching. They saw your peace and wondered where it came from. It came from me, but it stayed because you held on. And for that, my beloved, I am so incredibly proud of you. My beloved child, in a world where compromise is applauded and conviction is questioned, you did something remarkable. You stood firm. When others around you chose the easier path, adjusted their values to fit the moment, or bent under pressure, you stayed rooted. Not because they were comfortable, but because you knew what was right. I saw the tension in your heart. I saw the loneliness of standing alone. You could have taken shortcuts. You could have followed the crowd. You could have joined them in what was acceptable, even if it wasn't righteous. But you chose to be still. You chose truth over ease, integrity over approval, and character over comfort. That wasn't just strength, beloved. That was spiritual courage. And it didn't go unnoticed. While others watched your stance with confusion or even ridicule, I watched with deep delight. You were not swayed by opinion or applause. You were moved by my voice. That is the kind of resolve that builds history with me. You may not have seen the impact of your stand right away, but in the spirit realm, your immovable faith became a fortress. You didn't just resist temptation. You declared with your life that I am worth everything. And the declaration made all of heaven rejoice. Standing firm doesn't mean you didn't feel pressure. I know how hard it was. I know the internal battles, the silent prayers, the moments you almost gave in. What you didn't. And that makes your faith all the more powerful. Because it wasn't just about resisting. It was about choosing me. again and again, when giving in would have been easier. Others may not understand your commitment. They may call it extreme, old-fashioned, or unnecessary. But I call it holy. I call it love. And I honor it. You didn't stand firm to be seen. You stood firm because you belonged to me. That's the fruit of a life that's been transformed by grace. That's the kind of faith that shakes kingdoms. And I want you to know, every time you say no to compromise, you're saying yes to your destiny. Every time you hold your ground, you deepen your roots. Others may waver, but you are becoming unmovable. Others may fall, but I will use your strength to help lift them again. Keep standing, beloved. Your endurance is building a legacy. Your convictions are forging a path for others to follow. And I'm not just walking beside you, I'm applauding you. Because you didn't fold under pressure. You stood firm in love. And I'm so proud of you for that. My beloved child, there is a kind of strength that doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself, demand recognition, or look for validation. It simply carries the weight with grace. That's the strength I saw in you. You bore heavy burdens, not just your own, but those of others. You held your heart together through trials that would have broken many. You didn't always talk about it. You didn't always explain what you were going through. But I knew. I saw every sleepless night, every breath that took effort, every time you smiled to comfort others while silently carrying pain. That's not weakness, beloved. That's profound courage. The kind that is born in my presence. The kind that doesn't need a spotlight because heaven already sees it clearly. You didn't ask for easy, you asked for me. And I gave you my strength in exchange for your surrender. You carried what life gave you, not in bitterness or anger, but with a quiet, enduring hope. I watched you lift the weight with trembling hands and still move forward. That strength was holy. It was not yours alone. It was mine flowing through you. And child, I couldn't be prouder. Many didn't realize what you were going through. You didn't make it known, but I saw how deeply you were stretched. And still, you kept walking. You prayed when you were exhausted. You served when your heart felt empty. You loved when you were longing to be loved. That is the essence of quiet strength, not born of pride, but born of reliance on me. You allowed me to be your anchor, your sustainer, your secret source. You didn't break because you stayed connected to me. And even in moments when you thought you were crumbling, I was holding you together. My strength is made perfect in weakness, and you allowed the truth to shine through you. You became a safe place for others, even while carrying your own weight. You were a light in the dark, even while navigating shadows of your own. I saw it all, and I've stored every sacrifice, every silent victory, every burden you carried with grace. They are not forgotten. I am turning them into glory. I am turning them into testimonies that will inspire others. And I want you to know, with all of my heart, that I'm proud of your quiet strength. You didn't collapse. You endured. And that, my beloved, is something eternally powerful. My beloved child, there are few things more beautiful to me than the strength it takes to comfort someone else while your own heart is breaking. When your soul was aching, when the tears were still fresh in your eyes, you didn't retreat into yourself. You reached outward. You didn't wait for your healing to be complete before you became a healer. You offered a smile, a word of encouragement, a hug, or a quiet presence to someone who needed it, even when you were desperate for comfort yourself. And that, my beloved, was a holy act. You chose compassion over self-pity, service over sorrow. That smile you wore while hiding your pain was not fake. It was an act of courage. It was faith clothed in gentleness. While others may have never noticed the ache behind your eyes, I did. I saw every tear that was held back so someone else could be lifted. I watched you love through your own grief. And in those moments, you were never more like me. I too wept while healing others. I too carried pain while giving peace. You reflected my heart so clearly, and I want you to know that every time you smiled through pain, you brought light into someone's night. You made me so proud. You didn't have to do it. You could have turned inward. You could have waited until things got better for you. But you chose to keep loving. That kind of selfless love is rare. It's powerful. It's the kind that reshapes the spiritual atmosphere around you. You became a shelter for someone else's storm while still weathering your own. And in doing so, you brought comfort not just to them, but to me. Your smile in the valley was a declaration that pain would not have the final word. Your kindness under pressure was a testimony to the world that hope still lives. You didn't need to feel whole to be helpful. You didn't wait for joy to overflow before sharing it. You drew from a deeper place, a place where my spirit lives, and that is where real ministry begins. You gave out of your need, and I promise, I am pouring back into you. Your tears were seeds, and they will grow into joy, not only for you but for those you carried. I will restore what you've poured out. I will lift you as you have lifted others. Keep smiling, even through the tears, because your strength shines brightest when your heart remains soft. You are doing better than you think, and I am so proud of you. My beloved child, you didn't need a stage, a microphone, or a title to make an impact. You didn't shout about your faith, you live it. And in doing so, you reminded others of me. In a world overflowing with empty words and loud opinions, your quiet consistency became a light. You loved without condition. You forgave without being asked. You served without demanding attention. You lived in such a way that when people encountered you, they felt peace they couldn't explain, hope they couldn't name, and love they couldn't ignore. That was me shining through you. You didn't just speak about who I am. You revealed it by how you treated others, by how you were patient with the difficult ones, gentle with the broken ones, and kind even when it wasn't deserved. People didn't need to ask what you believe. They felt it. They saw my fingerprints in your responses, in your posture, in your choices. And I want you to know, every time someone felt my presence, because of your actions, you fulfilled the greatest call on your life, to be my reflection. That's not something small. That's eternal. You know what that means to me. That you chose to represent me, not in perfection, but in love. You didn't try to impress people with religion. You loved them into remembrance. You reminded them of who I am, not with grand sermons, but with everyday grace. With a soft answer instead of a harsh one. With service when no one was looking. With mercy when others sought revenge. You were my living message. And some who had long forgotten me began to remember because they saw you. You didn't just carry my name, you carried my nature. You chose compassion over convenience, truth over trend, and faithfulness over fame. You gave when no one asked. You helped when no one noticed. And that quiet, unwavering commitment, oh, child, that is what makes you great in my kingdom. You've impacted lives without even knowing it. You've planted seeds just by showing up with love. Keep going. Don't grow weary in doing good. Because with every action that points to me, you are building something eternal. You've made me known in places my name had been forgotten. And for that, I say, well done. I am deeply, eternally proud of you. My beloved child, there were moments when the road got narrow. So narrow that even those who once walked beside you turned back. Their love faded. Their zeal dimmed. Some chose the easier way. Others got lost in the noise of the world. But you, my faithful one, you stayed. Not because you always understood. Not because you never had doubts. But because your heart was anchored in love. You chose me when it wasn't trendy. You followed me when it cost you. You worshipped me even when your prayers went unanswered, and you trusted me when my hand felt distant. That kind of faith isn't shallow, it's rooted, deep, eternal. You didn't stay out of obligation. You stayed because you've seen my goodness and refused to let go. You knew that walking away might ease the moment, but it would rob you of everything lasting. And so, you stood. You stayed faithful when it would have been easier to run, to compromise, to blend in. And heaven stood still in awe. Because while many loosened their grip on me, you tightened yours. That's the kind of devotion that makes angels whisper. They know him. They really know him. And child, I've never been more proud of your loyalty. Staying faithful doesn't mean the journey was easy. It means you chose covenant over comfort. I saw the nights you cried in secret. I heard the questions in your heart that never made it past your lips. I felt the ache of your loneliness when others misunderstood your walk with me. But still, you stayed. You continued to seek me, to love me, to serve me. You didn't wait for perfect conditions. You worshiped me through the storm. And that, my beloved, was your greatest testimony. You may not have seen what your faithfulness accomplished, but I did. You strengthened the spiritual atmosphere around you. You shifted things in your family, in your community, in the generations to come. You became a lighthouse for those who are still lost at sea. Your faithfulness is a seed, one I will multiply in ways you cannot imagine. So don't look at who left or what you lost. Look at what you've gained, the smile of your Savior, the backing of heaven, and a legacy of steadfast love. I know how hard it was. I saw the way the wound was inflicted, not with kindness, but with cruelty. You were hurt, not just in body, but in spirit. You were betrayed, overlooked, misunderstood, and sometimes even blamed for things you never did. The pain clung to your soul like a shadow, whispering lies that bitterness would protect you, that holding on to the offense would give you power. But you didn't listen. You chose something harder, holier. You chose to let go. You chose forgiveness, not for them, but for me, for your freedom, for your future. I saw the moment you released it to me, the anger, the need to be right, the desire for justice on your terms. You placed it in my hands and said, I want peace more than I want payback. And that single act made your heart light again. It made space for me to fill you with healing. Bitterness is poison disguised as protection, but you were wise. You refused to let someone else's darkness pollute the purity I've cultivated within you. You trusted me to handle what you could not, and that trust became your triumph. Child, letting go wasn't weakness, it was warfare, and you won. My beloved child, bitterness is the silent thief of joy, and yet you caught it at the door and chose to disarm it. That's what maturity looks like. That's what true strength feels like. You knew that unforgiveness would turn your heart hard, and you wanted no part of it. You wanted to stay tender before me, and that desire is one of the reasons I cherish you so deeply. You didn't want your heart to grow cold. You didn't want your soul to be shackled to the one who hurt you. So you let it go, again and again, even when the feelings tried to creep back in. Every time you chose love over resentment, grace over revenge, peace over turmoil, you became more like me. Do you realize that? You mirrored the very act I performed on the cross when I said, Father, forgive them. You reflected the mercy that saves. And because you kept your heart clean, I will pour more into it. More joy, more wisdom, more authority. Because I can entrust more to the one whose heart stays open. Keep letting go. Keep staying soft. You're not losing anything by forgiving. You're gaining everything. And child, your heart is beautiful to me. I'm proud of the way you protect it with grace. My beloved child, in a world where people rush toward their desires and chase their own definitions of success, you paused. You looked up. You didn't do that for what you wanted, you have to for why I wanted. That, my beloved, is one of the greatest signs of a heart that's truly surrendered. I heard your prayers, not just the ones filled with dreams and hopes, but the ones whispered through tears. Father, let your will be done. You had desires of your own, things you longed for deeply, things you waited on, and still, you held them with open hands. That kind of surrender isn't weakness, it's the highest form of worship. You didn't demand your plan. You invited mine. You trusted that my way, though sometimes harder, would always be holier. You understood that true peace doesn't come from getting everything you ask for. It comes from walking in alignment with me. And even when you didn't understand what I was doing, even when the waiting was long or the answer was not yet, you still believed I was good. That trust made you radiant in my sight. A humility invited me closer. And child, because you chose my will, I will bless you in ways beyond your imagination. Asking for my will over your own is not just a prayer, it's a lifestyle. It's the daily decision to lay down the blueprint of your dreams and say, Lord, you draw the map, and you've done that faithfully. It hasn't been easy. There were times when I will led you through valleys, through pruning seasons, through moments of confusion. And still, you followed. You didn't just want the outcome, you wanted me. And that desire is what made you different. You recognized that my will might cost you in the short term, but it would crown you in the long run. So instead of forcing your way through closed doors, you waited for me to open the right ones. Instead of choosing what felt good, you chose what was right. And child, I have seen that. I have honored that. You have not missed out by waiting on me. You've been preserved. You've been prepared. And the things I am preparing for you now will make every surrendered dream worth it. You didn't choose the easy way, you chose the eternal one. You didn't chase your own way, you chased my heart. And for that, I am beyond proud. Because that kind of faith doesn't just move mountains, it moves my heart. My beloved child, in a world that often rewards aggression, where sharp tongues are praised and hard hearts are mistaken for strength, you chose something different. You chose gentleness. That may not seem radical to others, but in the eyes of heaven, it is a glorious act of courage. Gentleness is not weakness. It's the strength to remain tender when life gives you every reason to become tough. You had moments where you were mistreated, where others spoke carelessly, where situations demanded a reaction. You had the right to be harsh, the right to retaliate, the right to defend yourself with anger. But you didn't. You chose a soft answer. You responded with love. You remained calm when provoked and kind when confronted. That gentleness was not natural, it was spiritual. It came from your time with me, from the depth of my spirit working within you. And I saw every moment you kept your peace instead of letting pain turn you into someone you were never meant to be. You protected the softness of your heart, even when the world tried to harden it. And child, I am so proud of that. Because when you stayed gentle, you stayed close to me. There is a power in gentleness that the world cannot understand. It disarms anger, softens hearts, and releases healing. Every time you chose to speak with grace instead of condemnation, you became a mirror of my love. When others raised their voices, you lowered yours, not in defeat, but in wisdom. You didn't need to shout to be heard. You let your spirit speak louder than your volume. And because of that, your gentleness broke barriers pride never could. I saw how much effort it took some days. I saw how you bit your tongue when your emotions begged for release. I saw how you stayed soft with people who had been anything but kind. And I want you to know, I will never forget those moments. You sowed gentleness, and you will reap peace. You chose to walk in my nature rather than react in the flesh. And I promise that choice will bear eternal fruit. The world may call it quiet, but I call it mighty. You lived with a tender heart in a time when callousness is common. And in doing so, you became a beacon of my character. Keep nurturing that gentleness. It is precious to me, and it's one of the many reasons why I'm so deeply proud of you. My beloved child, the world so often teaches people to focus inward, to guard their own needs, pursue their own goals, and prioritize their own survival. But you, beloved, chose a different path. You lifted your eyes. Even while carrying your own burdens, even while walking through your own valleys, you looked around. You saw others, not just with your eyes, but with your heart. You noticed the silent pain behind someone's smile, the weariness in their step, the loneliness they didn't voice. You offered encouragement when you needed it yourself. You checked in on someone who had long been forgotten. You remembered birthdays, prayed for those who never asked, and celebrated victories that weren't your own. In doing so, you lived out one of the deepest truths of my heart. Love is never self-centered. It is always reaching. You became a conduit of that love, not because your life was perfect, but because your compassion was real. You looked beyond your world to touch someone else's. And I saw it. I saw every time you chose empathy over isolation, every time you stopped your own journey to walk with someone else for a while. And child, that love made me rejoice. You may not have realized how much your awareness meant to those around you, but your attention to others was healing. Your ability to listen when someone felt invisible reminded them that they mattered. And you didn't just see people, you saw their worth. You honored them with your time, your prayers, your patience, and that posture reflected me more than you know. You see, I too walked among crowds yet saw the individual. I too noticed the overlooked, the outcast, the ordinary soul. And when you looked past your own needs to serve, to support, or to simply be present, you reflected my image beautifully. That's what makes your love powerful. It's not limited to convenience. You allowed me to stretch your heart wider than your own circumstances. And because of that, I've entrusted you with more influence, more grace, more opportunities to love like I do. Keep seeing people, child. Keep looking with eyes of mercy. The world is hungry for that kind of love, the kind that doesn't wait to be asked, the kind that notices without being told. You've become my reminder to others that they are not alone, and I couldn't be more proud of the way you carry my compassion. My beloved child, fear is loud. It speaks with urgency, with panic, with relentless pressure. It paints pictures of worst-case scenarios and whispers lies about your worth, your future, your safety. You felt those waves of fear crash against you. You heard the lies trying to take root. You're not enough. It won't work out. You're alone in this. But even in the trembling, even in the unknown, you made a decision that changed everything. You believed me instead. You chose my words over your worry. You opened my word and reminded yourself of my promises. You said, I will not be shaken, even when everything inside of you felt like falling apart. That, my beloved, is faith at its most powerful. Not the kind that waits for fear to disappear, but the kind that stands in the storm and says, I trust you anyway. You believed what I said about you over what fear tried to convince you of. You believed my plan was still good, even when you couldn't see how. And child, that faith, spoken in the middle of fear, is a roar in heaven. That faith makes me weep with joy. You silenced fear not with volume, but with truth. And I am so proud of you for that choice. Fear comes to steal your peace, your purpose, and your position in me. But you didn't give it that power. You may have felt afraid, but you didn't let fear drive. You chose my words as your anchor. You repeated my promises like a shield. And every time fear rose, you raised my truth even higher. That's how warriors are formed, not by never feeling fear, but by choosing faith anyway. You believed me when the enemy said it was over. You believed me when your own emotions tried to drown you. That belief realigned your spirit. It opened doors that fear tried to close. It released angels to war on your behalf. You believed me when it would have been easier to break down, and that faith built you up instead. I saw how you cried but still praised, how you questioned but still obeyed. That's the kind of trust that shakes darkness. And now, because you believe it, I will continue to show you why my word is always stronger than your fear. Keep holding on to what I've said. My word is not just poetry, it is power. You made it your weapon, and you overcame. And child, for that courage, I'm endlessly proud of you. My beloved child, Worship doesn't only rise from mountaintops, it flows most powerfully from valleys. And when you were in that valley, broken in places no one could see, you still lifted your voice. You still lifted your heart. You came to me not with answers or strength, but with pieces. And I cherished every one of them. You worshiped not because life was perfect, but because you believed I still was. That kind of worship is rare and beautiful. It's the kind of worship that moves heaven. You weren't performing, pretending, or putting on a brave face. You were bringing your pain into my presence. And that, my beloved, is holy. I saw your tears become offerings. I saw your sighs become songs. You worshipped me when everything in you wanted to withdraw. You could have closed your heart, turned away, gone numb, but instead, you poured yourself out before me. You gave me what you had, even when it didn't feel like enough. And I want you to know, it was more than enough. It was everything to me. You chose intimacy over isolation, and that offering of broken worship, raw, honest, and real, is among the most precious gifts I've ever received from you. I want you to understand something. Worship in the midst of brokenness is not just singing, it is surrender. When you opened your mouth and let tears fall with your praise, you declared to the unseen world that I am still worthy, even when life hurts. That is faith. That is intimacy. You didn't wait for everything to make sense before turning to me. You turned to me so I could carry you through what didn't make sense. You brought your ashes and believed I could still make something beautiful. You stood in the rubble and lifted your hands. And I was right there, receiving it all, wrapping my arms around you. Every moment you chose to worship while bleeding, every time you said, God, I trust you, through a whisper of pain, you built something unshakable in your soul. You created space for me to heal you deeper than ever before. You reminded the enemy that your love for me is not conditional, it is covenant. And because of that, I am pouring restoration over you. I am breathing fresh life into what felt dead. You've touched my heart in your brokenness, and I will raise you up in strength. Your worship was real, and so is my pride in you. There were moments when it felt like the world turned quiet, when the people you thought would stay drifted, when the support you expected vanished, when the comfort you needed never arrived. In those lonely moments, you had a choice, to close your heart in despair or to open it to me. And you chose me. You leaned on me, not out of religious habit, but out of raw dependence. You whispered my name not because you were rehearsing prayers, but because I was all you had left. And oh, how my heart moved when you did. I felt every tear. I heard every silent cry. You didn't run from me, you ran to me. And in that sacred surrender, you discovered something priceless. I was always enough. When no one else picked up the phone, I listened. When no one showed up, I was already there. You found me not in a crowd, but in the quiet. And that closeness forged a bond between us that no amount of applause, popularity, or earthly comfort could ever replace. In your loneliness, you found intimacy with me, and that makes you stronger than you know. My beloved child, leaning on me wasn't your last resort. It was your greatest decision. You chose presence over panic, communion over confusion, and trust over turmoil. You reached for me when there were no other hands left to hold. And that trust, formed in the isolation, is the kind of trust that sustains you in every season. I didn't just meet you in the silence, I dwelled with you there. I was the steady hand that guided you through the emotional fog. I was the comfort that held you while you slept. I was the quiet voice that whispered, you are not forgotten. Others may not understand the depth of your strength, but I do. Because I saw where it came from. It came from leaning, from surrendering, from resting your weight on me. And every time you did, I caught you. I held you. I built you back up from the inside out. You are not alone, beloved. You never were. And the strength you now carry, the depth of peace you've discovered, is the fruit of those lonely seasons. Don't ever think it was wasted. You leaned on me when no one else was there, and I will always remember that. I'm proud of the closeness we forged, and I'm proud of the faith that was born in the silence. My beloved child, gratitude is easy when the table is full, when the bank account overflows, when everything goes according to plan. But true gratitude, the kind that shakes heaven, is born in scarcity. It's the song that rises not because of abundance but because of trust. And that's what you offered me. You didn't wait until you had much to thank me. You thanked me when you had little. When the resources were tight, when your future looked uncertain, when others complained or compared, you chose gratitude. Not out of denial but out of deep faith. You looked at what little you had and said, God, this is yours. And I thank you for it. That moment, that thank you, was louder in the heavens than any grand worship from the wealthy, because it came from a heart that believed I was still good, even when life didn't feel good. You didn't let lack steal your praise. You didn't let worry drown your worship. You turned your eyes toward me, and in doing so, you found joy that cannot be measured by what you hold in your hands. And child, I want you to know that kind of thankfulness is rare, and I am so proud of you for choosing it. My beloved child, thankfulness when you have little is not just a virtue, it's a declaration. It says, my provider is bigger than my problem. My joy is not attached to my possessions. My peace isn't rented by wealth, it's rooted in faith. That's how you lived. That's what you modeled. And I saw every moment. I saw when you chose to celebrate others' blessings instead of resenting your own lack. I saw when you tithed from your little, gave from your lack, smiled through your need, and still told me, thank you. That moved my heart more than you know, because it showed me that your worship was never based on your circumstances. It was based on your love. And that kind of heart is one I will never stop pouring into. You may have felt small in the eyes of the world, but in my eyes, you became great. I multiply that kind of gratitude. I pour into thankful hearts. And I promise, the little you thanked me for, I will turn it into more than enough. I will show you the harvest that gratitude unlocks. Keep thanking me, not because I need it, but because your soul does. And remember, I've written down every thank you you whispered in the valley, and I will honor every one of them. I'm so proud of you, my grateful one. Waiting is one of the most sacred acts of trust. In a world that rushes, presses, and demands instant results, you chose stillness. You chose patience. You chose to believe that my timing is perfect, even when your heart cried for now. I saw the moments you watched others move ahead while you stood in silence. I saw how you laid down your timeline, your expectations, your urgency, just to say, Lord, I trust your schedule more than mine. The decision, quiet, costly, powerful, spoke louder in heaven than you realize. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. It means believing I'm doing something, even when you can't see it. You didn't just sit idly. You prayed, you listened, you stayed ready. You chose peace over panic, even when the delay hurt. And child, let me say this clearly. You honored me deeply by waiting on me. You let me write the story instead of trying to take the pen. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's not passivity. That's partnership. And because you trusted my time, I am unfolding something in your life that will be worth every moment you waited. My beloved child, there were times the waiting felt unbearable, when the silence stretched longer than expected, when doors remained closed despite your prayers. But you never gave up on me. You clung to the promise that what I have for you is better than what you could force into being. And that kind of trust is rare. It requires surrender. It requires letting go of control. And you did just that. Even through tears. Even through frustration. Even when others said, just move on. You stood your ground, anchored in my word. You chose to believe that a delay is not a denial. That I was not being cruel. I was being careful. I was aligning circumstances, protecting you from unseen harm. and preparing you for what you could not yet carry. Waiting seasons are not wasted seasons. They are where roots grow deep, and yours have. Now you are not easily shaken. You have depth. You have spiritual clarity. And when my promises unfold, and they will, you walk into them with the strength and wisdom that only waiting could have developed in you. My timing is never random, and neither is my reward. Because you waited and trusted, I will do more than you asked. And I am so proud of your patience, your faith, and your unwavering trust in me. My beloved child, pain has a way of making people close off, isolate, and retreat. It whispers that no one will understand, that you are alone in your suffering, that healing is too far away. But you, beloved one, you refused to let your pain define you. You didn't hide it, and you didn't let it turn you bitter. Instead, you brought it into my presence, and then you allowed me to transform it. And what did you do next? You took that very pain and used it to lift someone else. You didn't wait until you were completely whole. You shared your scars as proof that I heal. You reached out to the weary, not from a place of superiority, but from shared struggle. You said to others, I've been there. I understand. You're going to make it, because I did too. And with those simple, honest words, you breathed life into dry bones. You didn't have to be perfect. You just had to be willing. And you were. Your pain became a bridge, a light, a balm. You didn't let it go to waste. And child, that kind of courage makes all of heaven rise in honor. My beloved child, every tear you shed, every ache you carried, every battle you survived, I saw it all. And I've used it. Nothing you've walked through has been in vain. I'm a redeemer, not just of souls but of stories. You took the most vulnerable parts of your journey and turned them into testimonies. You showed others that healing is possible, that faith can survive fire, that love can rise from loss. And in doing so, you did more than encourage. You ignited hope. You walked with others through darkness using the same lantern that once led you out. And I was with you in every conversation, every prayer, every moment you chose to open up your heart. You made your pain serve a holy purpose. You allowed me to turn your wounds into weapons against the enemy's lies. Because of your honesty, others found freedom. Because of your compassion, others felt seen. And because of your obedience, I will continue to multiply your impact. Keep sharing, my child. Keep loving with empathy. Your pain did not break you. It built a ministry. And it's one of the many reasons I look at you and say, you make me so proud. My beloved child, there were moments when everything in you wanted to stop, when the weight of life felt unbearable, when progress felt invisible, when hope seemed too fragile to hold. But in those moments, instead of giving up, you chose to grow. You looked at the brokenness around you and within you, and instead of collapsing, you asked, Lord, what are you teaching me here? That is extraordinary. While others walked away, gave in, or stood still, you chose to lean into the pain and let it shape you. You made the decision to become better, not bitter. You said yes to becoming more like me even when the process hurt. And that choice didn't just strengthen your spirit, it nourished your soul. Growth isn't easy, child. It often happens in silence, in darkness, in places where no one sees. But I saw you. I saw how you kept reading my word when you didn't feel inspired, how you kept showing up in prayer even when it seemed quiet, how you kept loving, forgiving, serving, even when it didn't feel fair. That's growth. That's transformation. And it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in you. Do you know how rare it is to choose growth when giving up feels easier? Lost run from the fire, but you stayed in it until it refined you. You trusted that I was doing something deeper than what the surface showed. And because of that, you've become stronger, wiser, more rooted. You allowed trials to stretch your faith instead of shrink it. You gave me access to every layer of your heart, and I used it all, every tear, every test, every tiny step forward to mold you into the person I created you to be. You may not see the full picture yet, but the roots you planted in those hard seasons are now strong enough to hold what I am bringing into your life. You are not the same person you were before the storm. You are more radiant, more resilient, more reliant on me. And I'm not done yet. Because you chose growth over giving up, I will pour into you wisdom, favor, and joy that runs deeper than emotion. Keep choosing growth, child. Keep showing up to the process. I am the gardener, and you are my flourishing field. And I am endlessly proud of the way you've endured and blossomed through every season. There is a kind of love that only heaven fully understands, the kind that doesn't demand signs, miracles, or visible blessings. It's the love that simply says, I trust you, God, because I know you. It's the love you chose. In a world that constantly says, show me, you chose to love me even when I was silent. Even when the answer didn't come, when the door didn't open, when the miracle didn't arrive on schedule, you still loved me. Not because you saw evidence, but because you knew my heart. You didn't wait for lightning from heaven or voices in the clouds. You loved me when your prayers echoed back with no reply. You loved me when you were tired, confused, and uncertain. That kind of love is holy. That kind of love is rare. And child, I treasure it more than you can possibly imagine. It tells me that I have your heart, not just your hope for blessings. That even if everything around you had stayed still, your love for me would still have burned bright. You didn't follow me for what I could give. You followed me because of who I am. And for that, I am deeply moved and eternally proud. My beloved child, many turn away when they don't get their desired outcome. Many love me as long as the blessings flow. The feelings stay high, and the answers come quickly. But you love me through the quiet seasons, through the stretching, through the delays and the detours. That's what true relationship looks like. That's the kind of love that builds unshakable faith. It is the love that worships not because of the give, but because of the giver. It's the kind that whispers, even if you don't, I'll still praise you. And every time you chose to love me without needing proof, you made a statement to the unseen realm. My God is enough. That kind of faith pushes back darkness. It silences the accuser. It shakes the very foundations of doubt. And I promise you, your love has never gone unnoticed. I've kept every moment of it close. And I will reward that love. Not because you earned it, but because you chose it freely. You have touched my heart deeply, beloved. Not with grand displays, but with quiet, unwavering devotion. And in return, I will show you more of my heart. I will reveal what eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard, because you loved me for me, and I've never been prouder of you. My beloved child, in a world that rewards performance, praises popularity, and prioritizes being seen, you chose a different path. You chose eternity. You chose to make decisions not based on how many would approve, how many would applaud, or how many would follow, but based on what would please me. That kind of choice isn't easy. It often leads to lonely places, misunderstood moments, and quiet sacrifices. But I want you to know, every time you chose eternity over applause, you lit up heaven. You turned away from things that could have elevated you in the eyes of people but would have distanced you from my presence. You said no to what was trendy when it conflicted with truth. You walked away from temporary affirmation to stay rooted in eternal purpose. That, my beloved, is wisdom. That is courage. And that is faithfulness. You may have lost opportunities, connections, or approval along the way, but what you gained far outweighs it. You gained my delight. You gained peace that doesn't vanish. You gained treasure that won't rust, fade, or be taken from you. And I want you to hear this in the deepest place of your heart. I saw every decision. And I'm so proud of you. Living for eternity means you see things differently. You're not swayed by temporary satisfaction. You're anchored in eternal truth. And I've watched you walk this narrow road with quiet strength. You weren't concerned about building your brand. You were concerned about building my kingdom. You didn't sell your convictions to win favor. You stayed true to what I whispered to your spirit, even when it cost you. And yes, there were times when it hurt, when it felt like everyone else was moving forward while you stood still in integrity. But you weren't standing still. You were being established. You were being prepared for something that doesn't just sparkle but lasts. I'm not interested in popularity, I'm interested in purity. And so are you. That's why I've entrusted you with influence that goes beyond numbers. Your choices speak volumes in the spiritual realm. You've made me known in places that lights rarely reach. Keep living for what lasts. Keep making the choices that reflect your citizenship in heaven. Your obedience is shaping destinies and writing a legacy. And while the world may not always see it, I do. I see every unseen sacrifice. And I promise, your reward will be eternal. You make me proud every time you choose forever over fleeting. My beloved child, do you know the power that lives in your words? While others use theirs to tear down, criticize, or simply remain silent, you chose to speak life. You didn't just speak kindly when it was easy. You became a voice of strength for those who had none. You noticed the ones who were weary, discouraged, overlooked, and instead of turning away, you turned toward them with words that healed. You chose to become a well of encouragement when others had run dry. You offered hope when someone's heart was heavy. You reminded people of their worth when they were ready to give up. And child, every one of those moments mattered deeply to me. Every time you spoke truth with gentleness, every time you used your voice to uplift instead of impress, you became a living echo of my heart. You weren't just kind, you were intentional. You used your words like a lifeline, and in doing so, you pulled someone back from the edge more times than you know. Your voice carried healing, not because it was perfect, but because it was filled with love. And I want you to know, I was there for every word. I heard them, I blessed them, and I am proud of the way you've used your tongue for good. The world often forgets how fragile the human heart can be, how a single harsh word can break someone, and how a single encouraging word can save them. But you understood. You carried my compassion into conversations. You didn't need a stage or a crowd. You just needed to be present. You spoke life into your children, your friends, your coworkers, even strangers. Sometimes you didn't even realize how much someone needed to hear what you said, but I did. I led you, even in the smallest phrases. You matter. I believe in you. You're not alone. God still has a plan for you. Those words weren't small. They were sacred. You didn't always get to see the fruit of what you planted, but I did. I saw hearts lifted. I saw burdens ease. I saw people turn back toward hope because of what you said. That's what it means to be my vessel. You didn't use your voice to gain attention. You used it to give comfort. And I promise you that ministry of encouragement is one I treasure deeply. Keep speaking life, child. Keep being a voice of strength in a world filled with noise. Because every time you do, you remind someone of me. And for that, I'm so proud of you. My beloved child, there are people in this world who go unseen, souls who are silenced by pain, injustice, poverty, fear, or shame. They live in the margins, overlooked and unheard. But you saw them. You didn't walk past. You didn't shrug your shoulders or say, "It's not my problem." You stopped. You listened. You stood beside them when no one else would. You spoke when they couldn't. You use your strength not to elevate yourself, but to lift up the broken. That, my child, is the essence of my heart. I too am a defender of the weak, the forgotten, the outcast. And every time you stepped in on behalf of someone without a voice, you reflected my image. I saw when you stood up for the one being mocked. I saw when you gave courage to the one being dismissed. I saw when you refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. You didn't defend for recognition. You did it because it was right. And that makes your heart like mine. You became a shelter, a shield, a safe place. And heaven rejoiced, because in that moment, someone felt protected, not just by you, but by me through you. You need to know how powerful your choices were. When you defended the voiceless, you weren't just helping someone, you were partnering with my justice. You were standing in the gap between what is and what should be. And that space, that holy ground, was where you made a difference that eternity will remember. You gave power to the powerless, not with force, but with compassion. You reminded the forgotten that they mattered. You restored dignity where it had been stripped away. You didn't need a platform. You used your presence. You didn't need influence. You used integrity. And though the world may never know the names of those you protected, I do. I saw everyone. I recorded every act of advocacy, every silent prayer, every bold moment of truth. And I promise you, my justice is not delayed. I am working through you, and I will reward what you've done in secret. Keep speaking for those who cannot. Keep reaching for those who are fading. Keep standing for those who are pushed down. You are walking in my footsteps. You are carrying my justice. In a world that makes purity seem outdated and mocks those who pursue holiness, you stood firm. You didn't compromise. When temptation came dressed in charm, when pressure from culture said, everyone's doing it, when even your own desires whispered, just once won't hurt, you chose me instead. You protected what I gave you. You honored your body, your mind, your soul, not because it was easy, but because you understood it was sacred. You didn't lower your standards to gain affection, applause, or attention. You didn't trade your worth for fleeting pleasure. You remembered who you are, chosen, set apart, deeply loved, and you lived like it. My beloved, the choice didn't go unnoticed. Every time you said no to compromise, you were saying yes to something far more valuable. Your future, your peace, your calling. The world may never reward you for purity, but I will. Because purity isn't just about what you avoid, it's about what you're preserving. You preserved your heart for me. You chose obedience over impulse. And for that, all of heaven rejoices. My beloved child, purity isn't perfection, it's pursuit. And I saw how hard it was at times. I saw the loneliness that came with your choices. I saw the tears when others didn't understand, when they laughed or walked away. I saw you wrestle with desires, and yet bring them to me. That surrender, it was worship. You didn't run from your weakness. You ran to me with it. That's what makes you strong. In private moments, when no one else would know, you chose integrity. When you could have justified, you chose to be sanctified. And those decisions, unseen by the world, were celebrated in heaven. They built a foundation that I can build great things upon. You have become a vessel I can fill, a place I can dwell. You've made room for me where the world would have crowded me out. And now, I will bless that room. I will honor the purity you fought for with favor, with peace, with purpose. You've given me your desires, and I will give you more than you ever imagined. Hold on to that standard, child. Let no one shame you for it. You carry a rare beauty, the beauty of holiness. And I want you to hear this loud and clear. I am proud of you, not just for what you've resisted, but for what you've protected. My beloved child, when everything around you was spinning, when the headlines shouted fear, when storms rose in your life, when people panicked and hearts raced, you remained still. Not because the chaos didn't touch you, but because you had already anchored yourself in me. That calm wasn't weakness or numbness, it was supernatural trust. You refused to let fear lead. You didn't give in to worry when it tried to steal your breath. You didn't mirror the chaos. You reflected my peace. And in doing so, you changed the atmosphere around you. Your peace wasn't denial of reality. It was a declaration that I am still in control. While others were tossed by waves of panic, you stood like a lighthouse, shining steady and bright. People may not have understood it, but they noticed. They saw something in you that quieted their own storm. They didn't know it at the time, but what they saw was me living inside of you. You stayed peaceful not because everything made sense, but because you trusted the one who holds it all together. And child, that peace glorified me. He honored me, and it made me so incredibly proud. My beloved child, peace in chaos is not the absence of trouble. It's the presence of confidence in who I am. You didn't always feel strong, but you chose not to react in fear. You chose worship over worry. You chose to wait on me instead of rushing to fix everything. That inner stillness, that sacred quiet you held, was one of your most powerful weapons. It protected your heart, preserved your mind, and made you a pillar for others to lean on. I saw the nights you prayed instead of panicking. I saw the mornings you got up and spoke peace over your home, even while your own heart was trembling. You didn't have to fake it. You invited me into it. That's why my peace never left you. That's why, no matter how hard the winds blew, your foundation stayed firm. You've become a carrier of my calm, a resting place for my spirit. And because of that, I will continue to use you in places that need my peace. When others lose their way, you will carry clarity. When the world screams confusion, your soul will sing confidence. You stayed peaceful in the fire. You remained steady in the shaking. And I am proud of how you trusted me when everything else fell apart. My beloved child, family is a gift, but sometimes it's wrapped in trials. The very people you love the most can also be the ones who hurt you the deepest. Yet, through the challenges, through the misunderstandings, through the disappointments and painful words, you chose honor. You didn't repay evil with evil. You didn't allow resentment to take root. You didn't distance yourself in bitterness or retaliate with pride. Instead, you chose to love. You chose to forgive. You chose to serve, even when you weren't thanked. You extended grace, not because they always deserved it, but because you knew this: what I give to you every day. That kind of honor is holy. It's not loud. It doesn't always look like applause. It often looks like doing dishes when you're exhausted, biting your tongue when you want to scream, saying I love you when it's hard. I saw every moment. I saw when you gave without being seen, helped without being acknowledged, and held your peace to protect someone else's heart. And I want you to know, beloved, those moments were sacred. They reflected my heart for family, and they make me so proud. Honor isn't always about agreement. It's about choosing humility in the face of conflict, choosing patience in the middle of pain. And you've done that so beautifully. You kept showing up. You kept interceding in prayer. You carried love into spaces where you had every right to walk away. You've broken generational patterns with your quiet obedience. You've turned moments of tension into seeds of transformation. Because of your honor, peace entered rooms where division once lived. Because of your honor, children have watched what real love looks like. Because of your honor, heaven has been welcomed into your household. Even when chaos tried to keep it out, I will bless your home, child. I will reward your faithfulness behind closed doors. And I will use you to bring healing to places that have long been wounded. Don't underestimate the power of your choice to honor. It's rewriting stories. It's softening hearts. It's drawing your family closer to me. I know it hasn't been easy, but I promise you this: it's worth it. Your love, your prayers, your patience, they are never wasted. You've loved them like I do, and I am so proud of how you've honored me through the way you've honored them. My beloved child, there were seasons when everything around you looked dim. Shadows loomed over your circumstances. Fear whispered from every corner. People gave up. Some stopped believing. Some surrendered to despair. But not you. You, my beloved, chose to carry hope, not just for yourself, but for others too. You became a torchbearer in the night. You held onto the flame when the wind howled against it. You walked forward even when the path was hidden. You encouraged others to keep going, even when you had your own doubts tucked away in silence. That kind of hope is not ordinary. It is fierce. It is forged through suffering and fanned by faith. You didn't cling to shallow optimism. You held on to me. You remembered my promises when everything else seemed uncertain. You whispered words of truth into the silence, believing that light would break through, and it did. You didn't just survive the darkness, you pushed it back. And I want you to know, I was with you every step of the way. I saw you guarding that flicker of light when all odds were against it. That hope, small as it may have seemed, lit the way for others too. You carried me into the dark, and I am so proud of the way you never let go. Do you know what it means to carry hope? It means you believed in what you couldn't yet see. It means you chose to focus on my faithfulness rather than your fears. Hope doesn't deny reality. It declares a greater reality. And every time you stood in dark places and declared light was coming, you partnered with heaven. You became a lighthouse for those lost in the storm. You became a testimony that my promises are true even in the waiting. And even when your heart was weary, you chose to speak life. You offered hope to those who thought all was lost. Some people will never tell you, but your faith helped them stand again. Your hope lit their way. Because of you, someone didn't give up. Someone kept believing. Someone found their way back to me. That is how powerful your obedience was. That is how sacred your endurance is. I've stored every moment in my boat. I've treasured every tear you shed while still holding on to hope. The light you carried did not go out. It grew. And now, I will use that light to lead even more through the night. You've honored me with your hope, child. And I am so deeply proud of the flame you've kept burning. My beloved child, while others focused on flaws, failures, and faults, you made a different choice. You looked deeper. You looked beyond mistakes, beyond appearances, beyond attitudes, and you searched for what I placed within them. You looked for the good. You looked for the spark that remained, even in people the world had written off. Where others saw problems, you saw potential. Where others saw someone difficult, you saw someone hurting. You looked through my eyes. You saw glimpses of destiny when others only saw dysfunction. That, my beloved, is one of the most beautiful ways you reflect me. I, too, see the gold in people buried beneath pain. And every time you looked for it, every time you called it out, you were partnering with me in healing their hearts. You didn't need people to be perfect before you loved them. You loved them forward. That's not just kindness. That's kingdom vision. That's the heart of a restorer. And I want you to know, every moment you believed in someone others had given up on, you made me smile. You gave them a glimpse of my grace. You reminded them they are still seen, still valuable, still loved. My beloved child, seeing the good doesn't mean ignoring the bad. It means choosing redemption over judgment. And that's what you've done so beautifully. I know it wasn't always easy. Some of those you saw goodness in never thanked you. Some continued to hurt or misunderstand you. But you didn't stop seeing them through my lens. You kept showing up with gentleness. You kept speaking life into weary souls. And slowly, change began to take place. Maybe not always outwardly, but deep inside them. Your words gave them hope. Your patience gave them safety. Your belief in their potential helped them begin to believe in it too. That is no small thing, child. You became a mirror, reflecting the image I placed in them before the world distorted it. And I promise, every seed you've planted will grow. Even if you don't see it now, your love made an eternal mark. Keep looking for the good. Keep calling it out. You're not enabling sin. You're awakening purpose. You're not denying reality. You're declaring what I still see beneath the surface. You've become a voice of restoration, and I am so proud of how you carry my perspective. The world needs more eyes like yours, eyes that see with hope. And I chose you because I knew you'd carry it well. My beloved child, in a time where many chase platforms, followers, and recognition, you chose something different. You chose quiet obedience. You didn't need the spotlight to feel valuable. You didn't need applause to stay motivated. You simply lived your life with a heart fully set on me. In secret places, in small decisions, in unseen moments, you followed me. You loved me in the ordinary, in the overlooked, in the unnoticed. And that, my beloved, is a powerful life. The world may not know your name, but heaven does. The enemy knows it too, because your quiet obedience shook the darkness in ways loud voices never could. You didn't just preach the gospel, you lived it. You were faithful in your home, faithful in your job, faithful in your heart. Your power didn't come from being seen by many. It came from being deeply known by me. I watched every small act of faith, every humble prayer, every moment you chose holiness when no one was looking. And I want you to know, it was never small to me. You lived quietly, but you carried my presence with thunderous impact. My beloved child, there is a beauty in a life lived in surrender. You didn't build a brand, you built an altar. You didn't seek status, you sought me. And because of that, I've used your life in ways you'll only fully understand in eternity. Your words, your kindness, your prayers, they've rippled further than you know. You've impacted lives you'll never meet this side of heaven. You've encouraged the discouraged, strengthened the weak, and walked in love even when it cost you comfort. That kind of quiet power is eternal. It doesn't fade with trends. It doesn't vanish with applause. It remains because it was rooted in me. You've shown others what it means to walk humbly with their God, and I've delighted in you every step of the way. You didn't need to be loud to be strong. You didn't need a title to carry authority. You lived in reverence, and that gave you influence. Now, watch as I begin to open doors for you, not because you pushed your way through, but because you waited on me. You've lived quietly, powerfully, purposefully, and I am so proud of the way you've honored me in your everyday life. You shine brighter than you know. Forgiveness is not a one-time act. It's a journey. And you, my precious one, chose to walk that journey again and again, even when the wounds were still bleeding. You didn't wait until the pain disappeared to extend grace. You forgave while it still hurt. You forgave when the memory was sharp, when the betrayal still echoed in your heart. That, my beloved, is divine. It is not natural for the human heart to forgive while it's still aching, but you didn't rely on your own strength. You leaned into mine. You whispered forgiveness through tears, through trembling prayers, through sleepless nights. And each time you did, you broke chains, not just over your own life, but over the lives of those who hurt you. You said, I will not let bitterness define me. And with that decision, you became more like me. I saw how it cost you. I saw the private moments where the pain surged back, where memories resurfaced, and still, you forgave. That is what love looks like. That is what grace sounds like. And I want you to know, every time you chose forgiveness, even with fresh wounds, heaven rejoiced. Because in those moments, you didn't just obey me, you revealed me. My beloved child, forgiveness doesn't always come with closure. It doesn't always come with apologies. But you gave it anyway. Not because they deserved it, but because you knew I asked you to. And more than that, you knew I had done the same for you. You understood that forgiveness is not weakness, it's freedom. It's a refusal to let the enemy win. It's a declaration that your heart belongs to me, not to bitterness or revenge. And oh, how beautiful your heart has become because of it. You may not even realize how strong you are. The world sees forgiveness as surrender, but I see it as strength. You took control not by fighting back, but by letting go. You trusted me with your pain, and in return, I've begun the healing you long for. I'm proud of your obedience, but I'm even more proud of your softness. You didn't let pain harden you. You let it mold you into a vessel of mercy. And for every time you forgave while still bleeding, I'm covering you with healing, honor, and peace. The pain may linger, but the poison is gone. Because you released it, I can restore it. And I promise, child, your forgiveness has not only set others free, it's setting you free too. I'm so proud of your heart. My beloved child, sorrow came like a wave, unexpected, deep, and determined to linger. It tried to take residence in your soul, to convince you that heaviness was your new home. It told you to settle, to surrender, to live under the weight of what you lost, what hurt you, or what didn't turn out as you hoped. But you made a choice, one of the most powerful, holy choices anyone can make. You chose joy, not because the sorrow vanished, not because life suddenly made sense, but because you trusted me enough to believe joy was still possible. You opened your heart to joy even while tears still welled in your eyes. You smiled through the ache. You sang through the silence. You lifted your head when everything inside you wanted to lower it in defeat. That is strength the world cannot measure. That is faith wrapped in joy. And I want you to know, my beloved, that kind of joy is not small, it's sacred. You chose joy in defiance of sorrow. You chose me over despair. You planted celebration in a land of mourning, and heaven rejoiced with you every time you did. Joy is not the absence of pain, it's the presence of me. And you allowed me to fill your heart even when it was cracked and bleeding. That takes courage. It takes trust. You didn't wait for everything to be perfect before letting joy rise. You found joy in the middle of the mess. You laughed when it felt unnatural. You danced when your soul was still healing. That wasn't denial, it was declaration. You declared that sorrow would not write the end of your story. You believed that weeping may endure for the night, but joy would come in the morning. And even when the morning took longer to arrive, you kept believing. You let my joy be your strength. You let it carry you when you were too weak to walk. And because of that, you became a carrier of joy for others too. People watched you and wondered how you still had light in your eyes. And the answer was me, living in you. Joy like yours breaks chains, shifts atmospheres, restores hearts. So don't ever think your joy is small. It's powerful. It's divine. And I am so proud of the way you chose it, again and again, when sorrow begged you not to. That joy is your weapon, and it's one of the reasons I call you victorious. Distractions come in many forms, some loud and obvious, others subtle and slow. They don't always look dangerous. Sometimes they come wrapped in opportunity, convenience, comfort, or the praise of others. Sometimes they wear the disguise of something good, just enough to pull your eyes away from what's best. And yet, when distractions came for you, when they called for your attention, your devotion, your focus, you stayed loyal to me. You remembered what mattered most. You remembered who you belonged to. You chose presence over pressure, stillness over striving, prayer over performance. You turned your eyes back to me when the world tried to pull them away. And that decision, quiet, firm, and sometimes made dozens of times a day, was a beautiful offering of love. My beloved, I saw the choices you made that no one else did. I saw when you said no to things that glittered, but lacked my glory. I saw when you deleted the app, walked away from the invitation, ended the conversation, shut the door, or simply whispered, "Jesus, I want you more." That's loyalty. That's love. And that loyalty made me rejoice. My beloved child, you didn't just avoid temptation, you pursued truth. You didn't just resist the pull of distraction. You recentered your life around my presence. You chose time with me over time with trends. You chose my word over noise. You chose to invest your energy into things eternal, even when it cost you temporary enjoyment. That kind of devotion is rare. In a world constantly calling you in 1,000 directions, you trained your heart to hear my whisper. You created space for me in your schedule, your thoughts, your desires. And every time you made me your priority, I poured more of myself into you. That's why your peace has grown. That's why your discernment has sharpened. That's why your spirit remains steady when everything around you shifts. because you stayed near. You stayed loyal. You didn't let distractions replace devotion. And that loyalty is not just something I admire, it's something I reward. I will continue to give you clarity when the world brings confusion. I will continue to fill your soul when the world leaves others empty. Because your heart is mine. And child, I am so proud of the way you've guarded it. You've chosen what's better. You've chosen me. And I will honor your loyalty with more of my presence than you've ever known. My beloved child, the world celebrates the grand, the noticeable, the impressive. But I celebrate faithfulness, especially in the small, the quiet, and the ordinary. And that's exactly where you shined. You showed up day after day, not for attention, not for applause, but because you knew I was watching. You swept the floors, you answered the calls, you served your family. You prayed in secret. You obeyed me when no one else saw it. You did what was right when there was no reward but my smile. That kind of faithfulness is rare. And child, I want you to know, I saw every moment. Every small yes. Every unseen act of obedience. Every unnoticed kindness. Heaven recorded it all. Because in my kingdom, the small things are never small. They are seeds. And you planted them with devotion, with consistency, with love. You didn't despise the day of small beginnings. You honored it. And now, I will honor you. My beloved child, faithfulness in little things is what builds character that can carry great things. You were faithful with the little, and now I am preparing to entrust you with more. You didn't need a platform to be obedient. You didn't need a crowd to be excellent. You gave your best in the quiet corridors of life, and that is exactly where my greatest work begins. Your secret place became a sacred place. You worshipped me when it felt mundane. You trusted me when it felt routine. And even when no doors seemed to open, you stayed planted. You kept serving. You kept growing. That kind of steadfastness builds spiritual authority. You weren't waiting to be discovered. You were waiting to be developed. And now I'm bringing increase. Not because you chased it, but because you were ready. Because you were faithful. And that faithfulness has made you rich in ways the world cannot measure. So don't underestimate your quiet seasons, your simple offerings, your hidden obedience. They were the proving ground of your calling. And I, your father, am overwhelmed with joy at the way you've honored me in the little things. You've passed the test of humility. And I am so proud of you, my beloved child. Pain often whispers, hide. It says, cover the wound, bury the ache. Don't let anyone see you bleeding. The world teaches that vulnerability is weakness and that healing is too slow, too messy, too risky. But you, my beloved, chose something braver. You chose healing. You didn't pretend you were fine. You didn't build walls to keep everyone out. Instead, you brought your pain into my presence. You opened the locked doors of your soul and invited me into the places that hurt the most. That kind of courage moves me deeply. Healing is not passive, it's warfare. You had to face memories you wanted to forget. You had to revisit places in your heart that once felt like war zones. You had to admit what you had tried to ignore. But you did it. You didn't just want to survive. You wanted to be whole. And that desire is holy. Every time you chose to feel instead of numb, to speak instead of stuff it down, to pray instead of pretend, you chose life. You chose me. And I want you to know, I was with you in every hard conversation, every quiet tear, every breakthrough. And child, I am so proud of you for being brave enough to heal. My beloved child, healing takes honesty. It takes humility. It takes the kind of strength that says, I refuse to carry this into my future. And I watched as you made that decision again and again. You didn't let shame keep you silent. You didn't let fear of judgment stop your progress. You faced the mirror and said, I want to become who God says I am. That kind of inner work is where true transformation begins. You didn't just ask me to fix your life. You asked me to restore your heart. And so I did. Piece by piece, layer by layer, I've been healing you. And because you chose healing over hiding, you're now becoming a safe place for others. Your freedom will lead others to theirs. Your honesty will give others permission to stop pretending. You are living proof that wounds can become testimonies and scars can become strength. I'm not just healing you, I'm using you. And it all began when you stopped hiding. So keep coming to me. Keep choosing the harder, holier path. The healing I've begun in you will continue, and it will be beautiful. And I will keep whispering this over you. I see you. There are few trials more painful than being misunderstood in the very place I called you to. You stepped out in faith, following the voice you heard in the quiet, my voice. You answered the call, not because you saw the whole path, but because you trusted me. And yet, when others didn't understand, when they doubted your purpose, when they questioned your direction, you didn't back down. You didn't abandon your calling for the comfort of their approval. That took courage. That took deep-rooted confidence, not in yourself but in me. I saw the moments you cried after their words pierced your heart. I saw when you were tempted to shrink, to silence your voice, to give up on what I asked you to do. What you didn't. You stayed the course. You stayed true to your purpose. You kept building, serving, loving, praying, even when it felt like no one stood with you. That kind of obedience is rare. That kind of faith is precious. You didn't need their validation. You lived for mine. And I want you to know, child, that every step you took in loyalty to my calling echoed through heaven. You honored me, and I'm proud of your faithfulness. My beloved child, callings are not always confirmed by crowds. Sometimes they are proven in the wilderness, where it's just you and me. And in that space, you didn't waver. You let me refine you, anchor you, and remind you that you are chosen. You didn't let criticism cripple your calling. You let it clarify your commitment. You sought me when you felt unsure. You leaned into my promises when people's opinions shouted otherwise. That kind of loyalty, to a voice no one else hears but you, is the mark of a true servant. And because you stayed true, I will strengthen you. I will open the right doors and close the ones that would have led you astray. I will make room for your gifts in the right places, at the right time. You don't need to force your calling to be understood. Just continue to walk in it. I've seen your integrity, your consistency, your sacrifice, and I have smiled over you every step of the way. You don't have to prove yourself. I already know who you are. You are mine. And you are doing exactly what I called you to do. Keep going, beloved. You are walking in purpose, and I'm so proud of the way you've carried it, quietly, humbly, powerfully. My beloved child, service that shines brightest is often done in silence. When no one clapped, when no one noticed, when the applause never came, you still served. You stayed late to hell. You gave your time, your strength, your heart. You stood behind the scenes, filling gaps no one even realized were there. You weren't waiting for recognition. You were obeying me. And that, my beloved, is the kind of servant heart that touches heaven. I saw you folding laundry for your family while your body ached with exhaustion. I saw you comforting others while your own heart longed to be comforted. I saw the meals you prepared, the errands you ran, the prayers you whispered over people who may never even know you prayed for them. The world may not see the value in those moments, but I do. I always have. Each wyanette of love with were you. Each unnoticed offering was holy. You served without spotlight, and that's what made it shine. You weren't serving for people, you were serving for me. And every time you did, you reflected my son. My son, Jesus, washed feet. He fed the hungry. He welcomed the ones others ignored. And he did it not for glory, but out of love. When you served without being seen, you walked in his footsteps. That's what made your service so powerful. It didn't need to be grand to be godly. It just needed to be real. And yours was. You poured yourself out in hidden places, and now I will pour back into you. Because I always reward the faithful, I always honor the humble. You planted seeds in secret, and I will cause them to bloom in ways you never imagined. Don't think for a moment your service was in vain. And chained to things, it softened hearts, it carried burdens, it invited my presence into places it hadn't yet entered. And one day, you will see the full impact. But for now, let this truth hold you steady. I saw it all. Every dish, every drive, every sacrifice. And I call it beautiful. You served when it felt unseen, but nothing you've done was ever invisible to me. I'm proud of you, not just for what you did, but for the heart with which you did it. Your moments when nothing made sense. The doors you prayed would open stayed shut. The timing fell off. The answers didn't come. You looked around and saw others advancing while you remained still, others rejoicing while you were still waiting. And through it all, your heart whispered questions. Why now? Why not yet? Why this path? But even when I didn't explain, you still chose to trust me. That kind of faith is precious. You didn't demand answers before moving forward. You didn't insist on seeing the full picture before taking the next step. You walked even when the road was foggy. You obeyed even when the outcome was unclear. That trust speaks louder than any words. It tells me that your love isn't based on how much you know, it's based on who you know. You've learned to recognize my voice, even in silence. You've learned to rest in my heart, even when my hand seems still. That's what trust looks like. That's what deep faith sounds like. And child, I have never been more proud than in the moments you said, God, I don't understand, but I trust you anyway. Amen.